Hello everyone, this is Melanie from Lightbeam's Treasure, and today we're going to do part 3 of David Lynch's book, Catching the Big Fish: Meditation, Consciousness, and Creativity. I am going to start on page 75, and for those of you who don't know who David Lynch, he is the director that did such films as Blue Velvet, Dune, Eraserhead, Mulholland Drive. Oh, that's my little kitty crying. She wants some attention. What's the matter, baby? Anyway, so I'll be reading starting on page 75. This is part 3. All together now. When you work, you want a happy crew getting down the road together. You need the ability to focus on things as a group. You need to concentrate on one thing at a time and not have a million different things distracting you. This capacity grows when people start meditating and diving within. There's an expression: where the attention is, that becomes lively. So when you focus on a thing, it's almost as if you start moving and vibrating. You say, this is where we're going to go today. This is where we are, and this is what we want to accomplish. Then the work gets better, and the group gets happier. Twin Peaks. Ideas come along in the strangest way when you just pay attention. Sometimes things happen on the set that make you start dreaming. When we were shooting the pilot for Twin Peaks, we had a set dresser named Frank Silver. Frank was never destined to be in Twin Peaks. Never in a million years. But we were shooting in Laura Palmer's home, and Frank was moving some furniture around in her room. I was in the hall underneath the fan, and the woman said, "Frank, don't move that dresser in front of the door like that. Don't lock yourself in the room." And a picture came to me of Frank in the room. I went running in and asked, "Frank, are you an actor?" And he said, "Well, yes, I happen to be, because everyone in LA is an actor, and maybe everyone in the world." So I said, "Frank, you're going to be in the scene." We did a pan shot of the room twice without Frank, and then one time with Frank frozen in the base of the bed. But I didn't know what it was for or what it meant. That evening we went downstairs and we were shooting Laura Palmer's mother on the couch. She was lying there in sadness and torment. Suddenly she sees something in her mind. She bolts upright screaming. Sean, the camera operator, had to turn the wheels and follow her face as she bolted up. And it looked like to me he did a perfect job. So I said, "Cut! Perfect! Beautiful!" And Sean said, No, it's not." "What is it?" "There was someone reflected in the mirror." "Who was reflected in the mirror?" "Frank was reflected in the mirror." So things like this happen, and it makes you start dreaming. And one thing leads to another. And if you let it in, the whole thing opens up. The continuing story. I love going into another world, and I love mysteries. So I don't really like to know very much ahead of time. I like the feeling of discovery. I think that's one of the great things about a continuing story, that you can go in and go deeper and deeper and deeper. You begin to feel the mystery and things start coming. The popularity of continuing stories on TV goes in waves. Periodically, the networks do these polls, and they come up with different things. At one time, they had determined that people don't watch every single week. People may watch 2 times a month, so the reasoning went they will lose their way in a continuing story and drop away from the show. Obviously, the networks don't want people to drop away, so for a certain period of time, they sourced on a continuing story and wanted closed endings. I don't know quite how the network decided to let Twin Peaks become a pilot, but just because they let something become a pilot, it doesn't mean they're going to make it into a series. So it got that far. And even then, I really didn't know what to do with it. They sent these things to a place, I think it's Philadelphia, and they had people watch the shows and grade them. Somehow it got a fairly good score, but not spectacular. I don't know what happened between the time and the time it aired, but it just got huge on opening night, so that was a very lucky thing. The Red Room. On a summer day, I was at a laboratory called Consolidated Film Industries in Los Angeles. We were editing the pilot for Twin Peaks and had finished for the day. It was around 6:30 in the evening and we'd gone outside. There were cars in the parking lot. I leaned my hands on the roof of one car and it was very, very warm. Not hot, but nicely warm. I was leaning there and the red room appeared. And the backward thing appeared. And then some of the dialogue. So I had this idea, these fragments, and I fell in love with them. That's how it starts. The idea is you build this red room. So you think about it. Wait a minute, you say. The walls are red, but they're not hard walls. Then you think some more. They're curtains, but they're not opaque. They're translucent. Then you put these curtains there, but the floor needs something. And you go back to the idea that there was something on the floor, and it was all there. So you do this thing on the floor, and you start to remember the idea more. You try some things, and you make some mistakes, but then you rearrange, and the other stuff, and it feels like that idea felt. Ask the idea. The form which embodies that which appeared in consciousness, that is to be held within consciousness. Upanishads. The idea is the whole thing. If you stay true to the idea, it tells you everything you really need to know. You just keep working to make it look like that idea felt like it felt, it sounded like it sounded, and it was the way it was. It's weird because when you veer off, you sort of know it. You know when you're not doing something that is not correct because it feels incorrect. It says, no, this isn't the idea said it was. And when you're getting into the correct way, it feels correct. It's an intuition. You think your way through. You start one place, and as you go, it gets more and more finely tuned. But all along, it's the idea of talking. At some point, it feels correct to you. And you hope that it feels somewhat correct to others. Sometimes, I'll go in to see what was built on based on that idea. And for a moment or so, I think that's the right idea. It's fantastic. But a lot of times, you don't build the set. You find a location that feels correct based on that idea. And the location can be changed in many ways to get closer to the idea. The props, the lighting can all be altered. The light can play a huge role in this. And you just keep working and working until the thing feels correct, based on the idea. But if you pay attention to all the elements swimming together, lo and behold, at the very end, it's surprising how close it was to that original spark. New ideas come along during the process. And a film isn't finished until it's finished. So you're always on guard. Sometimes these happy accidents occur. They may even be the last pieces of the puzzle that allow it all to come together. And you feel so thankful. How in the world did that happen? During Blue Velvet, we were shooting a scene in the apartment of the character Ben, who's played by Dean Stockwell. At a certain point, Dean was going in singing In Dreams by Roy Orbison. He was going to lip sing to the song with Dennis Hopper. In the script, he was supposed to pick up a small lip from the table and use it as a microphone. But right in front of him on the set, and Patricia Norris, the production designer, said she did not put it there, was a work lamp. It had a long cord and its bulb was hidden from the audience, but it illuminated Dean's face. And Dean just snatched it up. He thought it was placed there for him. There's so many things like that came along. Sometimes accidents happen. They aren't happy. But you have to work with those and you adapt. You throw out this thing and you throw out that thing and throw out another thing. But if you pay attention to the original idea and you stay true to that, it's surprising how in the end, the things that were accident are honest. They're true to the idea. Test audience. Although you can't make a film with the audience in mind, at a certain point before it's finished, you need to experience the film with a group. Sometimes you lose your objectivity a little, and you need to get a feel for what's working and what isn't. That can be the worst screening, very close to hell on earth. But again, that's not film's finish until it's finished. After you screen it for the group, for the sake of the whole, certain things may have to be cut down and some things may need to be added. They're not exactly mistakes. Some of the scenes that are removed from the film are kind of nice scenes on their own. But to let the whole thing work, they have to be let go. It's part of the process. It always happens to some degree. Generalizations. It's dangerous, I think, to say that a woman in a film represents all women, or a man in a film represents all men. Some critics love generalizations, but that particular character in this particular story going that particular road, those specific things make it their world. And sometimes it's a world we like to go into and experience. Darkness. People have asked me why, if meditation is so great and gives you so much bliss, are my films so dark and there's so much violence? There are many, many dark things flowing around in this world now, and most films reflect the world in which we live. They're stories. Stories are always going to have conflict. They're going to have highs and lows, good and bad. I fall in love with certain ideas, and I am where I am. Now, if I told you I was enlightened, and this enlightened filmmaking would be another story. But I'm just a guy from Missoula, Montana, doing my thing, going down the road like everybody else. We all reflect in the world we live in. Even if it's to make a period film, it will reflect your times. You can see the way period films differ, depending on when they were made. It's sensibly how they talk, certain themes, and those things change as the world changes. And even though I'm from Missoula, Montana, which is not the surrealistic capital of the world, you could go anywhere and see kind of strangeness in how the world is these days, or have a certain way of looking at things. Suffering. It's good for the artist to understand conflict and stress. Those things give you ideas, but I guarantee if you have enough stress, you won't be able to create. And if you have enough conflict, it'll just get in the way of your creativity. You can understand conflict, but you don't have to live it. In stories, in the worlds that we go into, there's suffering, confusion, darkness, tension, and anger. There are murders. There are all kinds of stuff. But the filmmaker doesn't have to be suffering to show suffering. You can show it. Show the human condition. Show the conflicts and the contrasts. But you don't have to go through it yourself. You are the orchestrator of it. But you're not to let it in. Let your characters do the suffering. It's common sense. The more the artist is suffering, the less creative he is going to be. It's less likely that he's going to enjoy his work, and less likely that he'll be able to really do good work. Right here, people might bring up Vincent van Gogh as an example of a painter who did great work in spite of, because of, his suffering. I like to think that Van Gogh would have been even more prolific and even greater if he wasn't so restricted by the things that tormented him. I don't think it was pain that made him so great. I think his painting brought him whatever happiness he had. Some artists believe that anger, depression, or these negative things that give them an edge. They think they need to hold on to anger and fear so they could put it into their work. And they don't like the idea of getting happy. It makes them want to puke. They think it would make them lose their edge or their power. But you will not lose your edge if you meditate. You will not lose your creativity, and you will not lose your power. In fact, the more you meditate and transcend, the more things will grow and you'll know it. You will gain far more understanding of all aspects of life when you dive within. In a way, understanding grows, appreciation grows, the bigger picture forms, and the human condition becomes more and more visible. If you're an artist, you've got to know about anger without restricted by it. In order to create, you got to have energy. You have to have clarity. You have got to be able to catch ideas. You've got to be strong enough to fight unbelievable pressure and the stress of this world. So it just makes sense to nurture the place where that strength and clarity and energy come from, to dive in, to enliven it. It's a strange thing, but it's true in my experience. Bliss is like a flakjack. It's a protective thing. If you don't have enough bliss, it's invincibility. And when those negative things start lifting, you can catch more ideas and see them with greater understanding. You can get fired up more easily. You can get more energy, more clarity. Then you can really go to work and translate those ideas into one medium or another. Light of the self. He who sees everything as nothing but the self, and the self in everything he sees. Such a seer which roars from nothing. For the enlightened, all that exists is nothing but the self. So how could any suffering or delusion continue for those who knew this oneness? Upanishads. Negativity is like darkness. So what is darkness? You look at darkness and you see that it's really nothing. It's the absence of something. You turn on the light and the darkness goes. But sunlight, for instance, doesn't get rid of negativity. It gets rid of darkness, but not negativity. So what light can you turn on that removes negativity the way sunlight removes darkness? It is the light of pure consciousness, the self, the light of unity. Don't forget the darkness. Don't even worry about the darkness. Turn on the light and the darkness goes. Turn on the light of pure consciousness, negativity goes. Now you say, that sounds so sweet. It sounds too sweet, but it is a real thing. A tower of gold. Just as a mirror shines bright once it has been cleaned of dust, so are those who have seen the self shine in the mind and body. They will always and forever be filled with happiness. Upanishads. How does meditation get rid of negativity? Picture it this way. You are the Empire State Building. You've got hundreds of rooms, and in those rooms there's a lot of junk. And you put all that junk there. Now you take this elevator, which is going to dive within, and you go down below the building. You go into the unified field beneath the building, pure consciousness, and there's like this electric gold. You experience that, and the electric gold activates those little cleaning robots, and they start going, and they start cleaning the rooms, and they put gold in where the dirt and garbage was. These stresses that were in there were like coils of barbed wire can be unwound. They evaporate and they come out. You're cleaning and infusing simultaneously. You're on the road to a beautiful state of enlightenment. Religion. I was raised Presbyterian. I respect people who are religious, and I think they find something there that's beautiful. Just beautiful. There's truth there, because these religions are old, though they've been fiddled with, possibly, and I feel some of the original keys from the masters may have been lost. But we're all going to the same beautiful goal. That's the way I see it. All religions flow ultimately to one ocean. Transcendental meditation is a technique to experience that ocean. It's a technique practiced by people from all religions. Transcendental meditation is not a religion. It's not against any religion. It's not against anything. Drugs. We all want expanded consciousness and bliss. It's a natural human desire, and a lot of people look for it in drugs. But the problem is that the body, the physiology, takes a hard hit from these drugs. Drugs injure the nervous system, so it makes it much harder to get those experiences on your own. I have smoked marijuana, but I no longer do. I went to art school in the 60s, so you can imagine what was going on. Yet my friends, the ones who said, no, David, don't take those drugs, I was pretty lucky. Besides, more profound experiences are naturally available. When your consciousness starts expanding, those experiences are there. All those things can be seen. It's just a matter of expanding that ball of consciousness, and the ball of consciousness can expand to be infinite and unbounded. It's totality. You can have totality. So all those experiences are there for you without the side effects of drugs. Turn on the light. In the vicinity of yoga, unity, hostile tendencies are eliminated. Yoga Sutras. We are like light bulbs. If bliss starts growing inside of you, it's like a light. It affects the environment. If you go into a room where someone's been having an argument, it's not so pleasant. You can feel it. Even if the argument is over, you can still feel it. But if you go into a room where everyone has just finished meditated, you can feel that bliss. It's very nice to feel that. We all affect our environments. You enjoy that light inside, and if you ramp it up brighter and brighter, you enjoy more of it. And the light will extend out further and further. Industrial Symphony Number 1. Industrial Symphony Number 1 was the first and only time I've done a stage production. It was at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. We had 2 weeks to set it up, but only one day in the actual theater to put it all together and do 2 performances. I was working on the music with Angelo Badalamenti, and we were attempting some abstract musical things to different elements together. I had people building sets, but from the time sets went up, the whole thing had to be rehearsed and lit in one day. So the day came and we had a late morning and afternoon to rehearse. Then we had to put on 2 shows. I wanted to start rehearsing from the beginning to rehearse all the way through. We started, and about an hour and a half later, I hardly gotten into the thing, even though it wasn't very long. I had realized I was facing a gigantic disaster. I thought I'm never going to make it unless some kind of idea, and bingo, it happened. Maybe it's not reinventing the wheel, but perhaps it's just common sense. But what I did, I went one by one, and I would grab this person and say, "You see that over there? When the man goes there and then leaves, you go there." And then he'd say, "Okay. And when you get there, do this and this." "Okay." Then I go to the next person and I say, "You see that man over there? When he does this, that's your cue to go over there and do that and that." We never had a rehearsal, but fortunately, it all worked out. Lost Highway. By the time Barry Gifford and I were writing the script for Lost Highway, I was sort of obsessed by the O.J. Simpson trial. Barry and I never talked about it this way, but I think the film was somehow related to it. What struck me about O.J. Simpson is that he was able to smile and laugh. He was able to go golfing later with seemingly very few problems about the whole thing. I wondered how, if a person did these things, how he would go on living. And we found this great psychological term called psychogenic fugue, describing an event where the mind tricks itself to escape some horror. So in a way, Lost Highway is about that. And it also the fact that nothing can be stay hidden forever. Restrictions. Sometimes restrictions get the mind going. If you got tons and tons of money, you may relax and figure you can throw money on any platform that comes along. You don't have to think so hard. But when you have limitations, sometimes you come up with a very creative, inexpensive idea. My friend Gary D'Amico is a special effects man. He loves to blow things up. He's the one who blew up the house in Lost Highway. And he didn't have the stuff to do it. I didn't even know I was going to blow up the house. The production manager said, "Are we going to tear down the house? Do you want to save any of the stuff?" And I said, "Tear it down?" And I started thinking and went to Gary and said, "What if I wanted to blow something up?" His face lit up. He says, "I want to blow up the house." And he said, "Oh, I wish you would have told me. I don't know what I've got." But then he said, "Yeah, we can do it." And we went in, wired this thing up, and it was the most beautiful sight. If he had brought in what he would have known in advance, it wouldn't have been so beautiful. It was a soft explosion. It sent stuff hundreds of feet, but softly. And then we shot it backwards. So it turned out to be incredible. Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive was originally going to be a continuing story on television. We shot it as a pilot, open ended, to make you want to see more and more. I heard that the man at ABC who was making the decision whether to accept the pilot or not saw it at 6 a.m. He was watching television across the room while having some coffee and making some phone calls. Also, he hated what he saw. It bored him, so he turned it down. Then I had the chance, fortunately, to make it into a feature, but I didn't have any ideas. Now, you don't use meditation to catch ideas. You're expanding the container, and you come out very refreshed, filled with energy, and raring to go to catch ideas after. But in this particular case, almost the day I got the go-ahead to turn it into a feature, I went into meditation, and somewhere about 10 minutes in, there it was, like a string of pearls. The ideas came, and they affected the middle, the beginning, the end. I felt very blessed, but that was the only time it's happened during meditation. The box and the key. I don't have a clue what those are. A sense of place. A sense of place is so critical in cinema because you want to go to another world. Every story has its own and its own feel and its own mood. So you try to put all these things together with little details to create that sense of place. It has a lot to do with lighting and sound. The sounds that come into a room can help paint a world and make it so much fuller. While many sets are good enough for a wide shot in mind, they should be good enough for close scrutiny, for the little details to show. You may not ever really see them, but you gotta feel that they're there. Somehow to feel that it's a real place, a real world. Beauty. When you see an aging building or a rusted bridge, you're seeing nature and man working together. If you paint over a building, there's no more magic to that building. But if it's allowed to age, then the man has built it and nature has added to it. It's so organic. But often, people don't think to permit that, except for scenic designers. Okay, this was page 119. What I'll do is I will stop it here, and the last one will be the conclusion. So stay tuned for part 4. For once again, it's Catching the Big Fish, David Lynch. I'll be reading excerpts, and after part 4, who knows what the next book will read. If you like this content, be sure to give the thumbs up, subscribe, and stay tuned because I will have more books that I will be reading from my extensive library. Take care, everyone.